Welcome, friend. Tonight, we drift far away from the noise of the present, into the shadows of an empire swallowed by time. This is not just a history lesson. It's a quiet journey through the rise and fall of one of the most mysterious civilizations ever to walk the earth. The Maya. They left no grand farewell. No final battle cry. Only stone temples rising through jungle canopies, silent glyphs, and legends whispered across centuries. Before we begin, take a moment to rest your eyes. Let the rhythm of this voice guide you, slowly, calmly, through forgotten cities, starlit temples, and sacred rituals. And if sleep finds you somewhere along this journey, know that the Maya will still be waiting. Timeless. Patient. Ready to tell their story whenever you return. So let's begin. At the very beginning. Long before the Europeans sailed west. Before the Inca rose in the Andes. The Maya were already carving temples in limestone. Charting the stars with naked eyes. And recording time in calendars more precise than many we use today. Their world stretched across what we now call Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. A patchwork of kingdoms with jaguar kings, priest astronomers, and bustling stone cities that reached toward the sun. But who were these people? Where did they come from? And what drove such a brilliant society to vanish so mysteriously? To understand the Maya, we must travel back over 4,000 years. To the lowlands of Mesoamerica, where mist rolls over the trees like a second sky. And the jungle never forgets. If you're enjoying this quiet journey, feel free to like and subscribe for more calming stories. And we'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Just drop a comment below. In the misty lowlands of what is now Guatemala and southern Mexico, the roots of the Maya civilization took hold long before towering pyramids rose above the canopy. They did not begin as mighty rulers or astronomers. They began as farmers. Around 2000 BCE, small agricultural communities emerged, relying on staples like maize, beans, squash, and chili. These early Maya were expert cultivators, coaxing life from soil that others might overlook. And yet, they were more than just farmers. They began carving simple stone monuments, building ceremonial platforms, and organizing small village councils. Even then, traces of their future greatness were visible in their sacred fire pits, the way they watched the stars, and the stories whispered through generations. As centuries passed, these scattered communities grew more connected. Trade routes formed, not just for goods, but for ideas, art, language, and belief systems passed between settlements like sparks jumping from flame to flame. By 1000 BCE, early ceremonial centers began to appear. These weren't cities yet, but they held plazas, altars, and hints of the temple states to come. Through rain and silence, the jungle watched as the Maya slowly awakened to their destiny. Every stone laid in those formative centuries was a whisper of what would come, a vast civilization of architects, priests, kings, and stargazers. And while the world remained unaware, deep in the forests, a people were quietly preparing to rise. Beneath the thick green canopy of Central America, the ruins of the Mayan world once whispered to the wind, hidden for centuries, forgotten by time. It's easy to forget that the Mayan civilization was never truly lost, only buried, softened by vines and silence. Their cities were covered by jungle, but their stories remained in stone. The great city of Tikal, for example, once echoed with chants and footsteps, now stands as a sleeping monument to ancient ambition. Tall temples pierce through the treetops, built without metal tools, without wheels, yet with astonishing precision. The Maya didn't build along wide rivers or open plains like other civilizations. They built inside forests, carving cities from limestone and memory. They connected them through white stone roads, sakbiab, they called them, glowing under moonlight like paths to the gods. Imagine the sound of sandals brushing over stone, the scent of pine resin burning in temples, the steady rhythm of life pulsing in a city hidden from the outside world. And yet, for hundreds of years, their cities stood empty. Not because of one great collapse, but because of many small shifts, war, drought, power struggles, changes in trade. The Maya didn't vanish. They changed. They moved. And their descendants live on. The Maya were not only builders and astronomers, they were storytellers. Across temples and monuments, they carved entire histories into stone. Their writing system, made of intricate glyphs, is one of the most complex scripts ever developed in the ancient world. Each symbol, each curve, and held layers of meaning. Some told of kings and battles. Others described rituals, offerings, even the alignment of planets. For centuries, these glyphs remained unreadable. But slowly, piece by piece, linguists and archaeologists began to unlock them. One symbol at a time, the voices of the Maya returned. They spoke of rulers with names like Shield Jaguar and Lady Six Sky. They recorded eclipses and ceremonies with astonishing accuracy. It was as though the stones themselves had been waiting, silently, for someone to listen. And now, when we walk through places like Palenque or Copan, we're not just seeing ruins. We're standing inside a living library, where every wall holds whispers of a world long past. The night sky was not just beautiful to the Maya, it was sacred. They believed the heavens were a roadmap, a cosmic order that reflected the rhythms of life on Earth. They watched the stars from observatories built without telescopes, using only their eyes, geometry, and patience. The city of Uxmal was laid out in alignment with Venus. Chichen Itza's temple of Kukulkan cast a serpent-shaped shadow only during equinox. These were not coincidences. They were careful calibrations, sky and stone in perfect conversation. Maya priests tracked the moon's phases, the sun's path, the cycles of Venus and Mars. They predicted eclipses centuries ahead. And from this celestial knowledge, they created one of the most precise calendar systems ever conceived, the Tsokin and Hab, measuring sacred and solar time. To them, time itself was alive, a force that pulsed through creation, connecting ancestors, gods, and future generations. Every ceremony, every building, every act of war or peace, timed to the movement of the stars. In a world without machines, their minds reached beyond the clouds, weaving meaning into the movements of the cosmos. When we look up at the stars now, it's easy to forget we're following trails the Maya once walked. The Maya did not simply live with nature, they were part of it. Towering ceiba trees, lush vines, and sacred groves weren't just background to their lives. These were living extensions of their mythology. Every forest path, every stone step up a pyramid, echoed the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. The rainforest was not merely a setting, it was a sanctuary, a temple without walls. They believed the ceiba tree connected the underworld, the earthly realm, and the heavens. It stood at the center of their cosmology, a living axis between worlds. Even their gods had roots, wings, and claws. Nature was divine, and every creature had meaning, from jaguars and macusta to frogs and bats. This deep ecological wisdom didn't just shape their religion. It defined how they farmed, how they built, and how they worshipped. Every rustling leaf, every distant howl in the jungle, was a whisper from the spirit world, a sign, a story, a memory. And it all wove together, their temples, their myths, their forests, into a sacred order where nothing was random, and everything had purpose. Evening mist clung to the treetops as torches flickered before stone altars. Here, the Maya offered not just food or flowers, but memories, names, and whispers to their ancestors. To them, the line between life and death was not a wall, but a woven thread, linking the living with the spirits who came before. The ancestors were guides, protectors. Their wisdom echoed through generations, whispered in dreams and etched in stone. But even the ancestors followed time. And time, for the Maya, was no ordinary ticking clock. They didn't measure years the way we do today. They danced with two sacred calendars. The Tsokin, a 260-day ritual cycle, and the Hab, a 365-day solar year. Together, these formed the calendar round, a sacred rhythm of life, prophecy, and rebirth. Time wasn't linear. It was a wheel of destiny. Spinning, pausing, realigning, revealing windows into the soul of the universe. And just as day turns to night, so too did each life phase align with cosmic cycles. Ceremonies, planting seasons, even wars, all timed to the stars. To live Maya was to live in sync with time's sacred dance. To remember those who came before. And to know you are a leaf on the tree, but also the root that never forgets. And this is how we now begin to glimpse the deeper truths of the Maya world. In the dense jungles of Mesoamerica, beneath the thick canopies and the songs of howler monkeys, the cities of the Maya stirred with life. Unlike sprawling empires ruled from a single capital, the Maya civilization was a mosaic of independent city-states, each with its own king, its own gods, and its own ambitions. In places like Tikal, Calakmul, Palenque, and Copan, great stone plazas echoed with the footsteps of thousands. These were not just ceremonial centers, they were thriving, bustling cities where nobles debated policy, artisans crafted wonders, and farmers brought their harvest to the gates. The layout of a typical Maya city was intentional. At its heart stood a towering pyramid temple, often aligned with the stars, surrounded by ball courts, markets, and administrative buildings. Everything revolved around ritual and the cosmos. Life wasn't all grandeur. Most Maya lived in humble homes made of thatch and wood, spread beyond the core. But they were part of something grand, a civilization that moved with the rhythm of the sun, the moon, and the divine calendar. This was daily life, in the age of kings, gods, and jungle cities. Would you live here, among the sacred stones and whispering trees? To the Maya, time wasn't simply something that passed. It was sacred. Cyclical. A divine rhythm that pulsed through the stars, the earth, and even the blood of kings. Their calendars weren't just for counting days. They were tools for understanding the will of the gods. The Maya developed not one, but 3 interconnected calendars. The Tzolk'in, a 260-day ritual calendar, governed sacred ceremonies and the naming of children. The Hab, a 365-day solar calendar, mirrored the agricultural year. And the most mysterious of all, the Long Count, which traced cosmic cycles across millennia. Priests trained for decades to read these systems. A birthday was more than coincidence. It was destiny, mapped in glyphs and stars. Even wars, coronations, and temple constructions were timed to align with favorable cosmic energies. Through these intricate systems, the Maya didn't just measure time. They communed with it. Imagine knowing your fate before your first breath. To the outside world, the Maya calendar may seem complex. But to the Maya, it was alive. Each day carried its own spirit, its own energy. Days weren't just labels. They were personalities. Symbols. Portals. You didn't just wake up on a day. You were born into it. A day could be favorable or dangerous, depending on your purpose. Certain combinations of dates were feared. Others were celebrated. Marriage ceremonies, royal decrees, even planting crops. All timed with sacred precision. Time was something to be respected. Not managed, but honored. The Tzolk'in calendar cycled endlessly, each rotation revealing new patterns, new messages. And behind it all, priests and astronomers worked in silence, interpreting signs in the stars, whispers from ancestors, movements of Venus across the sky. It wasn't superstition. It was sacred science. And it shaped every aspect of Maya civilization. To the Maya, time was not a straight line. It did not begin, and it certainly did not end. Time was a circle. A living, breathing cycle that turned over and over, linking past, present, and future like an eternal chain. Every 52 years, the calendar round reset. A moment both feared and revered. It was believed that the gods could intervene, or that the world might change in unpredictable ways. These weren't just superstitions. They were deeply held truths, woven into creation myths and carved into temple stones. The long count calendar stretched back to what we would call 3114 BCE, the Maya equivalent of a cosmic birthday. From that point, every date was counted forward. Not to predict the end of time, but to honor its rhythm. Time had weight. It carried memory. It was sacred responsibility. And each generation of scribes and skywatchers carried that weight with humility, recording eclipses, solstices, and omens, not just for knowledge, but to keep harmony between humans and the heavens. The Maya did not just build cities. They shaped the earth into a mirror of the sky. Each structure, each plaza, each stairway was positioned with cosmic intent. Temples aligned with solstices. Ball courts echoed the paths of celestial bodies. Take El Castillo at Chichen Itza. During the spring and autumn equinox, the shadows cast by the setting sun create the illusion of a serpent slithering down the pyramid's side. A serpent named Kukulkan, part deity, part symbol of renewal. This was not by accident. It was mathematics. It was architecture. It was reverence, etched in stone. Cities like Copan, Tikal, and Palenque were more than political centers. They were calendars you could walk through. Observatories built from limestone. Places where time itself became visible. To the Maya, understanding the sky meant understanding their place in the universe. So their cities rose not just from ambition, but from devotion. They lived in rhythm with the stars, and they built in harmony with the cosmos. Even today, the jungle keeps its secrets. Beneath thick layers of vines, soil, and silence, lie entire Maya cities, still waiting to be uncovered. For centuries, explorers and looters alike walked past moss-covered mounds, never realizing they were temples, observatories, homes. But now, with LiDAR technology, a kind of airborne laser scanning, archaeologists are seeing through the trees. And what they've found is astonishing. Roadways stretching for miles. Entire city networks. Agricultural terraces, reservoirs, defensive walls. Not scattered villages, but a vast, interconnected civilization. A jungle metropolis that rivaled the scale of ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. What was once invisible is now unfolding before us in sharp detail. Each scan, each discovery, brings the ancient world closer to our own. And as we trace these outlines beneath the canopy, we begin to see the Maya not as vanished, but simply hidden, patiently waiting to be remembered. With each buried city, we begin to understand just how deeply the Maya shaped the land around them. They didn't just live in the jungle. They engineered it, redirected water, reshaped terrain, managed forests like living architecture. Even their farming wasn't simple subsistence. They cultivated maize, beans, squash. Not randomly, but with precision. Rotating crops, enriching soil. Understanding seasonal rhythms with uncanny insight. From above, the land looks wild. But beneath that canopy, there's order. Grids. Fields. Canals. Causeways. An ancient intelligence hums beneath the soil. An echo of a people who didn't just survive their world. They designed it. And when you see their city plans align with celestial patterns, you begin to sense something deeper. A civilization not only rooted in Earth, but reaching for the stars. And then, they disappeared. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just gradually. Cities emptied. Temples abandoned. Stone roads overtaken by roots and vines. It wasn't one collapse, but many small ones, rippling over centuries. Droughts. Internal struggles. Shifting alliances. A long decline. Like the setting sun slipping behind thick clouds. Yet even in this retreat, they left behind patterns. Stone glyphs still whispering their names. Astronomical calendars counting time in quiet precision. Ceramics buried with reverence. beneath the floors of now-forgotten homes. The jungle didn't destroy them. It sheltered their memory, waiting patiently until someone noticed that the hills had straight edges and the trees grew on rooftops. The jungle grew thick, but the stones stood taller. Limestone cities, silent and sprawling, now covered by green and forgotten names. But those names were never truly lost. They were etched into walls, painted on pottery, woven into stories that traveled on the wind. Some stones tell of gods who danced with fire. Others show kings with feathered crowns, holding the sun between their hands. There were ball courts where players leapt for glory, and sometimes for their very lives. There were steam baths, sacred wells, and schools of the stars. And all of it, still there, beneath the moss, under the soil. Not erased, but waiting for curious eyes, for patient hands, for a world finally quiet enough to listen. Not every stone told stories of kings. Some whispered of the ordinary, of lives lived quietly beneath the same stars we see today. There were farmers who coaxed life from poor soil, planting maize, beans, and squash in clever patterns. Fishermen who cast nets into sacred lakes at sunrise. Mothers who ground corn by firelight, singing softly as they worked. Children chased shadows through narrow alleys, learning games, languages, laughter. Artisans carved jade beads, spun vibrant thread from cotton and bark, and painted murals no wider than a hand, but no less meaningful than a royal decree. They mapped the skies, tracked the seasons, and honored the gods, not with grand temples alone, but with daily acts of care, rhythm, and meaning. And through these quiet rituals, they built a civilization that endured, not just in stone, but in spirit, still breathing, beneath the canopy of time. In the heart of the city, not far from the humble homes and markets, the temple plazas pulsed with quiet intensity. These weren't just architectural marvels, they were the spiritual lungs of the people. Every morning, soft footsteps echoed across the limestone as priests climbed the worn steps of the tallest temple. They moved slowly, with robes trailing behind, carrying incense made from copal resin, its scent thick and sacred in the rising sun. Below, people gathered without hurry. This wasn't the loudness of worship, but the calm rhythm of belief. Smoke curled into the sky in silent spirals. Murmured prayers blended with the breeze. Offerings of maize, cacao, and feathers were placed gently before stone altars, not in fear, but in deep, reverent connection. Even those who didn't fully understand the rituals still felt them. The energy of the city shifted with every chant. Life, in these moments, wasn't about survival or power. It was about stillness, alignment, gratitude. And so, the day truly began, not with noise, but with balance. Not far from the temples, the gentle clink of stone against stone marked the start of a different kind of ritual. In shaded courtyards, artisans worked with calm precision. The city's beauty was not just carved in monuments, it lived in everyday objects shaped by steady hands. One man etched a jade pendant, pausing between each stroke as if listening to the stone. Another woman wove intricate patterns into cloth dyed from crushed flowers and bark. Each knot, each weave, held a story, not just decorative, but deeply symbolic. These patterns told of rain, crops, family, and memory. There was no rush in their movements. Time, here, bent itself to care and concentration. Children watched silently, mimicking the motions with clay or palm fibers, learning without words. The city's pulse wasn't always loud. Sometimes it whispered through skilled fingers, through beauty born from patience. And even though these names and faces have been lost, their touch remains, in every artifact, in every design that still survives. As evening approached, shadows began to stretch across the city's grand walls, casting shifting patterns on the stone. The carvings, intricate and endless, seemed to come alive in the fading light. These weren't just decorations. Each panel, each chisel mark, spoke in a language older than writing. Stories of creation, celestial journeys, victories, and quiet offerings to unseen gods played out in silent sequence along every corridor. A passing breeze stirred dust into the air, momentarily blurring the figures before revealing them again, as if the city itself breathed through its stones. Pilgrims often paused, not just to admire, but to reflect. In this language of symbols and form, they found connection, not through sound, but through feeling. It wasn't what the carvings said, but how they made you pause, slow down, and wonder. And that was the city's gift, to turn stone into a mirror for the soul. Beneath the surface beauty of the temple city lay a deeper order, a cosmic logic woven into every structure. These ancient builders weren't just craftsmen, they were astronomers, mathematicians, and philosophers. The alignment of gateways, sanctums, and towers often mirrored celestial paths. Some corridors pointed toward the solstice sunrise. Others framed constellations only visible at certain times of year. This was architecture guided by the stars. The main sanctum, for instance, would often face east, capturing the first light of dawn, a daily ritual of renewal built into stone. Above, towers reached toward the sky, echoing mountain peaks or perhaps mimicking the axis of the cosmos. It wasn't just about direction, but intention. To walk through these spaces was to move in harmony with the heavens, as if the entire city was a map, connecting earth to sky. The daily life of a typical Mayan was a rich blend of tradition, duty, and devotion. In the countryside, most people were farmers, waking with the sun to tend to fields of maize, beans, squash, and chili. These weren't just crops, they were sacred staples, deeply embedded in myth and ritual. Maize, in particular, was believed to be the very substance from which the gods formed humanity. Homes were simple, made from wooden poles and thatched roofs, arranged around shared family courtyards. Children played near cooking fires, while elders passed down oral stories and time-worn customs. Clothing was practical but expressive. Men wore cotton loincloths and cloaks, while women wove vibrant textiles, their patterns telling subtle stories of identity and region. But life wasn't just about work. The Maya had a profound connection to the stars and the spirits. Their days were measured by two overlapping calendars, one solar, one sacred, and nearly every action, from planting to naming a child, was guided by these celestial rhythms. Priests acted as both astronomers and spiritual guides, interpreting omens, arranging ceremonies, and ensuring balance between the heavens and earth. Community events often centered around the ball court, a unique open-air arena where the ritual ballgame was played. It wasn't merely sport, it symbolized cosmic struggles and spiritual renewal. The bouncing rubber ball, heavy and solid, moved through stone hoops as players struck it using only their hips and thighs, no hands or feet allowed. Music, too, echoed through the streets, made with flutes, drums, and shell trumpets. It accompanied dance, ritual, and celebration, reminding everyone of their place in the grand cycle of nature and time. The Mayan world was structured but alive, grounded in the land, yet always reaching toward the stars. While the rhythms of Mayan daily life were guided by nature and tradition, their intellectual pursuits revealed astonishing sophistication. One of their most impressive legacies lies in mathematics. The Maya independently developed the concept of zero, a breakthrough rarely seen in ancient civilizations. Their number system was vigesimal, based on 20s, and used a combination of dots and bars to express values. It was both elegant and practical, allowing them to track time and astronomical cycles with remarkable accuracy. This mathematical precision was essential for their deep study of the skies. The Maya were passionate astronomers, and many of their cities were aligned with celestial events. Observatories without telescopes, such as the Caracol in Chichen Itza, were engineered to capture solstices, equinoxes, and the movements of Venus. They tracked eclipses, predicted celestial shifts, and mapped out solar and lunar cycles with incredible detail, all without modern instruments. Their calendar system, too, was a triumph of logic and observation. They didn't just use one, but three interwoven calendars, the hop, a 365-day solar calendar, the tsoken, a 260-day sacred calendar, and the long count, which recorded the passage of historical time in great cycles. Contrary to popular myth, their calendar did not predict the end of the world in 2012, rather, it marked the end of a cycle and the beginning of another, like a cosmic reset. Alongside numbers and stars, the Maya were also masterful writers. They developed one of the most advanced writing systems in the ancient world, a script of over 800 glyphs that combined logograms and syllables. These inscriptions were carved on monuments, painted in books called codices, and etched into pottery, recording history, myths, dynasties, and even day-to-day events. Their writing was art in motion, stylized, fluid, often accompanied by vivid illustrations of gods, kings, and cosmic events. Only a few of their codices survived the ravages of time and conquest, but what remains offers a window into a world of depth and imagination. The mind of the Maya was as vast and intricate as their jungle cities, blending logic, spirit, and symbol into one unified vision of the universe. Beneath the spiritual depth and intellectual brilliance of the Maya lay a complex web of political structures, decentralized, yet deeply interconnected. The Mayan world wasn't ruled by a single empire or supreme king. Instead, it was made up of city-states, independent yet often entwined in alliances, rivalries, and shifting power dynamics. Each city-state, known as a Keuhulaja, was governed by a divine king who held both political and sacred authority. These rulers weren't merely administrators, they were considered mediators between the gods and the people, responsible for performing rituals to ensure the balance of the world. Their legitimacy was tied not just to lineage, but to their ability to align themselves with celestial cycles and divine will. Cities like Tikal, Calakmul, Palenque, and Copan often vied for dominance, engaging in warfare not just for land, but for prestige. Battles were symbolic and strategic, with a strong focus on capturing rival nobles for ritual purposes rather than total destruction. Political marriages, strategic alliances, and long-lasting feuds shaped the Maya's ever-evolving geopolitical map. Yet for all the grandeur of their kings and ceremonial centers, the Mayan world was not built on conquest alone. It thrived through trade, vibrant, far-reaching networks that connected mountains, jungles, and coastal regions. Jade from the highlands, cacao from the lowlands, obsidian blades, salt, feathers, and finely crafted pottery all flowed through bustling markets and across rivers. And within this exchange of goods also flowed ideas, styles of art, architectural techniques, and even religious practices, traveling from one region to another. The Maya were not an isolated people. They were part of a rich cultural mosaic that stretched across Mesoamerica, interacting with other civilizations like the Zapotecs and later the Toltecs. But as time moved forward, the delicate balance that held this network of cities together began to strain. Population pressures, internal rivalries, prolonged droughts, and shifting trade routes all contributed to a slow unraveling. The cities didn't fall in a single moment, instead, their decline was gradual, uneven, and deeply human. By the close of the 9th century, something profound began to stir across the heart of the Maya lowlands. Cities that had once pulsed with sacred rituals and bustling trade slowly quieted. Grand temples stood untouched. Ball courts fell silent. Glyphs ceased to be carved. It wasn't a dramatic collapse, more a quiet fading, like a long, slow breath out. Tikal, Copan, Palenque, these great cities that had once led dynasties and influenced regions, were gradually abandoned. The reasons were not singular, but layered. Environmental strain played a role. Repeated droughts likely placed immense pressure on food systems already burdened by growing populations and deforested lands. Warfare also intensified. What were once ritualized conflicts grew increasingly destructive, fraying alliances and destabilizing city-states. Political instability made it harder for rulers to maintain control, and as confidence in leadership eroded, so too did the spiritual and social cohesion that had long held the cities together. Trade networks shifted. Routes that once connected the heartland to distant coasts were disrupted, and economic life waned. Without steady access to vital goods, Jade, obsidian, salt, cacao, both practical and ceremonial life began to suffer. But this was not the end of the Maya. Far from it. While many southern lowland cities fell into ruin, Mayan culture persisted and even flourished in other regions, particularly in the northern Yucatan. New centers like Chichen Itza and later Mayapan rose with distinctive blends of Maya and Toltec traditions, showing that while the classic world changed, the Maya were not lost. They adapted. The Maya continued to build, to worship, to write. Their calendars still turned. Their language evolved but endured. Even today, millions of people across Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras proudly speak Mayan languages, practice traditional rituals, and remember the stories of their ancestors. The cities may have been swallowed by jungle, but the spirit of the Maya never vanished. It lives on, not in ruin, but in resilience. High above the towering pyramids and dense jungles, the ancient Maya looked to the stars not simply for beauty, but for meaning, order, and guidance. They were master sky watchers, blending spiritual belief with precise astronomical observation. From early childhood, Mayan priests and scribes were trained to study the heavens. They noticed how Venus, bright and unwavering, reappeared in cycles, and came to associate it with war, fate, and the movements of kings. Lunar phases were tracked with care. Solar eclipses, too, were recorded and even predicted. These weren't just observations. They were events tied to rituals, prophecy, and timing of royal ceremonies. Structures across their cities were aligned with celestial bodies. At places like Uxmal and Copan, the temples and observatories were oriented so the sun would rise or set along precise architectural lines on equinoxes and solstices. On certain days of the year, sunlight would pierce small doorways or carve shadows across serpent carvings, signs of divine alignment. But perhaps most remarkable was how they used this knowledge. The Maya developed incredibly accurate calendars, not one, but multiple, each tracking time in its own sacred rhythm. The solar calendar marked the agricultural year, helping farmers know when to plant and harvest. The ritual calendar, the Tzolk'in, cycled through 260 days, guiding ceremonies, naming, and prophecy. And then there was the long count, a majestic timeline that stretched across millennia. It wasn't linear, like modern calendars, but cyclical. Time didn't end. It reset, refreshed, like seasons or breath. To the Maya, understanding the cosmos wasn't simply a curiosity, it was a necessity. Time, stars, gods, and people were intertwined in a great cosmic dance. Their calendar wasn't just a tool, it was a sacred heartbeat, ticking in rhythm with the universe. And through it, they found order in chaos, pattern and mystery, a rhythm in the stars above and the lives below. Numbers to the Maya were more than tools, they were sacred symbols, woven into the rhythms of life and the fabric of the universe. Their mathematical system was astonishingly advanced, especially for its time. Using just 3 symbols, a dot, a bar, and a shell-shaped glyph representing 0, the Maya created a vigesimal system, based on 20 instead of our base 10. With this, they could count vast numbers and perform complex calculations. But the true marvel lies in their understanding of 0, a concept that many ancient civilizations struggled with or never discovered at all. The Maya independently developed it around the 4th century, making them one of the earliest cultures in the world to do so. This understanding of 0 was critical. It allowed them to record precise dates, track astronomical events, and build intricate calendar systems. It helped shape how they saw time, not as linear, but cyclical, measured in repeating patterns and divine intervals. Their scribes and astronomer priests used this numerical power to carve dates into stone, track eclipses, and align sacred structures. Every calculation served a cosmic purpose. And behind each dot and line was a culture that saw divine intelligence in the order of numbers. Time, for the Maya, was not a straight line, it was a sacred cycle. Their entire worldview was built around the rhythm of the cosmos, and they developed multiple calendars to honor this harmony. The most well-known is the Tzolk'in, a 260-day ceremonial calendar made of 20-day names and 13 numbers. It wasn't just used to measure time, it guided spiritual life, agricultural rituals, and the selection of rulers. Then there was the Hop, a 365-day solar calendar that more closely matched the Earth's orbit. It was divided into 18 months of 20 days each, with a short 5-day period at the end called Wayeb, considered a dangerous, chaotic time when the boundary between worlds blurred. But perhaps the most profound was the long count, a grand calendar used to track vast cycles of time, stretching back to the mythical creation date of the world, August 11th, 3114 BCE. This calendar allowed the Maya to anchor their present in the deep past, offering a cosmic context for every event. When a new ruler was crowned, or a great building was erected, it was dated not just in years, but in backtons, katuns, and tons, layers of time echoing from the divine. The Maya weren't predicting the end of the world in 2012, as many believed. They were marking the end of one great cycle and the beginning of another. To them, time was eternal, ever-turning, and filled with meaning. In their temples and stelae, these dates are etched, stories carved in stone to remind future generations that the dance of time is not to be feared, but understood. To the Maya, the sky was not a mystery, it was a map. A living manuscript written in stars and shadows, guiding their rituals, decisions, and destiny. Deep within the jungles, the Maya built observatories not with glass and steel, but with stone and purpose. At places like Uxmal and Köppen, carefully aligned structures allowed priests and astronomers to track the sun's path, the moon's phases, and even the delicate dance of Venus across the morning and evening skies. Venus, in particular, held deep meaning. The Maya believed its cycles influenced war, agriculture, and the fate of kings. They recorded its position with astonishing precision, charting its rise and disappearance long before the invention of the telescope. Eclipses, too, were no accident. The Maya could predict both solar and lunar eclipses, understanding that such cosmic events were signs, moments when the heavens spoke to the earth. Their pyramids, like those at Chichen Itza, were aligned so precisely that on the spring and autumn equinox, sunlight would cast the illusion of a serpent slithering down the temple steps, a divine signal of seasonal change. These alignments weren't just architectural marvels, they were acts of devotion, linking the physical world with the spiritual. Every structure, every carving, every ritual, was calibrated with the cosmos in mind. The Maya saw the universe as a clockwork of gods and cycles, and by watching the stars, they believed they could remain in balance with the will of the heavens. In silence, under the canopy of the night, Maya skywatchers waited. And in those moments, when a star returned, or a shadow shifted, they felt the breath of eternity pass over their world. If the Maya were masters of stone and stars, they were equally brilliant keepers of time. Their calendars were more than tools, they were intricate systems that intertwined with religion, agriculture, and prophecy. At the heart of it all was the Tsoken, a 260-day sacred calendar. It didn't follow the sun or moon but rather a mysterious cycle that matched human gestation and spiritual rhythms. Each day had a unique energy, a combination of a number from 1 to 13 and one of 20 named day signs, like a mix, can, or a jaw. Alongside it ran the Hop, a 365-day solar calendar divided into 18 months of 20 days each, with 5 nameless days at the end. These were considered unlucky, a time when the boundaries between worlds grew thin. But the true genius of Maya timekeeping was in how these two calendars worked together in a repeating cycle called the calendar round, lasting 52 Hab years, or about 18,980 days. They even had a long count calendar, tracking time from a mythical creation date over thousands of years. This was what sparked the 2012 end of the world myth, though the Maya never claimed an apocalypse. Instead, it was a moment of renewal. A reset. The end of one grand cycle and the birth of another. For the Maya, time wasn't linear. It was cyclical. Sacred. Alive. Every date, every alignment, every glyph carved in stone, carried meaning, intention, and the pulse of eternity. When the Maya looked up at the night sky, they didn't just see stars. They saw stories. Gods. Warnings. Patterns guiding the rhythm of life. Their observatories, like the rounded structure at Chichen Itza known today as El Caracol, were architectural marvels aligned to track celestial events, especially the equinoxes, solstices, and the movements of Venus. Venus, in particular, held deep significance. It was linked with warfare, rituals, and the god Kukulkan. Its cycles were charted with astonishing precision, and decisions about battles or ceremonies were often made based on its rising or setting. The sun, moon, and Milky Way were also central to their beliefs. The Milky Way was seen as a sacred river, or even the pathway to the underworld, known as Xibalba. Eclipses, too, weren't just celestial events. They were seen as powerful omens, moments when the gods were displeased or cosmic forces realigned. Through careful tracking and deep spiritual insight, the Maya created astronomical tables so accurate that they rival those developed centuries later. Their knowledge wasn't merely academic, it was integrated into their very worldview, temple design, and daily rituals. To them, the sky was a living codex, written in stars, and only those who listened carefully could interpret its truths. And so they watched, night after night, not just for light, but for guidance. A typical day in a Mayan city was a blend of rhythm, ritual, and routine. As the sun rose, the city awakened with it. Children helped sweep courtyards, women prepared tortillas from fresh ground maize, and smoke curled up from cooking fires. The marketplace became a hive of activity. Traders offered cacao, cotton, obsidian tools, and ceramics, while bartering was done through cacao beans, salt, and woven goods instead of coin. Artisans in workshops carved jade, shaped stone, or painted detailed codices on bark paper, recording everything from rituals to taxes. At the center of it all, towering above, stood the temple pyramids, spiritual and political focal points. Priests chanted incantations, kept the calendar, and observed the heavens. Rulers emerged to address the people or oversee rituals. Children learned by doing. Boys helped fathers in farming, hunting, or craftwork. Girls assisted with food, textiles, and home life. Education was largely oral, passed through storytelling and ceremony. Music, too, was woven into their world, with drums, flutes, and shell trumpets echoing through plazas during festivals. Despite the grandeur of their temples and astronomy, much of Maya life was simple, connected deeply to nature, community, and cosmic cycles. Their cities weren't just centers of power, they were living, breathing organisms, pulsing with belief, tradition, and daily labor. At the heart of the Maya civilization lay an intimate relationship with the land. Agriculture wasn't just a way of life, it was the very foundation of their society, economy, and spirituality. The Maya landscape was diverse and often challenging: tropical lowlands, limestone hills, and highland plateaus. Yet they adapted skillfully. They didn't rely on rivers like other ancient civilizations. Instead, they engineered their environment. In swampy regions, they built raised fields, lifting crops above waterlogged soil. They used drainage canals to manage seasonal flooding and maintain soil health. On hillsides, they constructed stone terraces, creating level planting areas that reduced erosion and preserved fertility. Their main crop was maize, or corn, not only a food but a symbol of life itself. According to Maya mythology, humans were created from maize dough. Alongside maize, they cultivated beans, squash, and chili peppers, staples that formed the basis of the Mesoamerican diet. To clear land for planting, the Maya used a method called slash-and-burn agriculture, known as milpa. This method required deep ecological understanding. Land was farmed for a few years, then left fallow for decades to regenerate. It wasn't wasteful, it was cyclical. The Maya were also early practitioners of forest gardening, nurturing useful trees, vines, and plants within existing forests. This created layered, biodiverse ecosystems that provided food, medicine, and building materials while preserving the natural balance. Farming had a spiritual dimension too. Before sowing seeds or harvesting crops, ceremonies were performed to honor Chak, the rain god, and the maize deity, often involving dances, incense, and offerings. For the Maya, farming was never just a transaction with the earth, it was a sacred contract. Every seed planted echoed the rhythms of the cosmos. For the Maya, life was inseparable from the cosmos. Every ritual, festival, and daily task was linked to a grand celestial pattern, the movements of the stars, the balance of the earth, and the breath of the divine. Their worldview was rooted in a layered universe, the underworld, Zabalba, beneath, the middle world of humans, and the upper world of gods and celestial bodies. These realms were connected by a sacred axis, often represented by a ceiba tree, its roots stretching into the underworld, its trunk in the human world, and branches reaching the heavens. Sacred rituals served as a bridge between these realms. Ceremonies were held at temples, caves, cenotes, and open plazas, each site believed to be a portal to the spirit world. Bloodletting was one of the most important and dramatic acts of devotion. Rulers, nobles, and even priests would offer their own blood to communicate with the gods, often drawing it from their tongue, ears, or limbs. Far from being viewed as suffering, this act was sacred, a gift of life energy. It was believed to open visions and dreams, enabling the elite to receive divine messages and maintain cosmic order. The Popol Vuh, a key sacred text of the Kitsch Maya, recounts epic stories of gods, twin heroes, and the origins of humanity. These myths were retold in dance, drama, and ritual, not as entertainment, but as acts of remembrance and renewal. Calendrical events were tied to ceremonies. The Tzolk'in calendar, with its 260-day cycle, guided spiritual life and divination. When significant dates approached, rituals intensified, incense filled the air, drums echoed through stone courtyards, and masked dancers became avatars of gods and ancestors. The Maya didn't just observe time, they participated in it, aligning their rituals with cosmic rhythms. To them, each moment carried sacred weight, and every ritual reinforced the invisible threads that bound the universe together. Among the Maya's many cultural achievements, one stands out for its mix of athleticism, ceremony, and deep symbolic meaning, the Mesoamerican ballgame, known as pits in the classic Maya language. This was no ordinary sport. It was a reenactment of cosmic battles, a sacred performance echoing myths and maintaining the balance of the world. The game was played in stone courts, often found at the heart of major Maya cities. These courts were eye-shaped, flanked by sloped walls where carved rings or markers were placed. The objective? Using only their hips, players had to strike a solid rubber ball, sometimes weighing up to 4 kilograms, through stone hoops or into scoring zones. But this wasn't just about skill and endurance. According to the Popol Vuh, the hero twins played the ballgame against the lords of the underworld. Their victories symbolized triumph over darkness and death. Every match, in a sense, retold this cosmic drama. Teams were often composed of nobles or warriors, and the stakes could be incredibly high. In some contexts, especially during royal ceremonies or times of political transition, the game culminated in ritual sacrifice. Contrary to popular myth, it wasn't always the losers who were sacrificed. In some cases, it was the winning captain, seen as worthy of offering his life to the gods. This would be an honor, ascending into the divine after fulfilling a sacred role. The game also held political weight. Victories on the court could symbolize the supremacy of a city-state, the legitimacy of a ruler, or the favor of the gods. Courts were often decorated with carvings of captives, celestial symbols, and ballplayers frozen in dynamic action, reinforcing the power and prestige of the ruling elite. Spectators gathered not just for entertainment, but to witness a ritual that echoed the very heartbeat of Maya cosmology. For the Maya, every bounce of the ball mirrored the motions of the sun, moon, and planets, a dance between life and death, order and chaos. To understand the Maya, one must understand maize, not simply as a crop, but as the spiritual and physical cornerstone of their civilization. The Maya believed they were made of maize. According to their creation myth, after several failed attempts, the gods finally formed humans from maize dough, breathing life into a people destined to honor the earth and sky. This wasn't just myth. Maize, or corn, was the foundation of daily life. The Maya cultivated it in sprawling milpa systems, a rotating patch of land where maize was planted alongside beans and squash in a complementary triad. This practice not only enriched the soil but created a balanced diet, supporting large populations for generations. Farmers used stone tools, digging sticks, and controlled burning to prepare fields. They read the skies and tracked the stars, aligning their planting and harvest cycles with celestial calendars. Rituals accompanied each stage of cultivation, from sowing to reaping, ensuring divine favor for healthy crops. But maize was more than food. It was a symbol of identity. In ceremonies, it was offered to the gods, placed in tombs, and painted in murals. The Maya even had a maize god, often depicted as a youthful figure with flowing hair shaped like corn husks. His cyclical death and rebirth reflected the seasonal rhythms of planting and harvest. Across cities and rural communities alike, maize influenced art, economy, and even politics. Tribute systems often demanded quantities of maize, reinforcing hierarchies and connecting remote farmers to royal centers. Despite challenges from droughts, pests, or war, the Maya sustained their fields with deep ecological wisdom. Their ability to coax life from the earth, without metal tools or draft animals, was nothing short of remarkable. Every tamal eaten, every offering burned, every myth passed down, all told the same story, that maize was not merely nourishment. It was sacred essence, the thread connecting heaven and earth, gods and humans, past and future. To the ancient Maya, the sky was not just a canopy of stars, it was a map, a calendar, a divine manuscript. Their lives were shaped by the heavens, and their greatest achievements were written in stone to mirror celestial rhythms. Maya astronomers, often high-ranking priests, spent lifetimes observing the skies. Without telescopes, they tracked the movements of the sun, moon, Venus, and even eclipses with astonishing precision. Their observatories, like the round tower at Chichen Itza, called El Caracol, were aligned with solstices and equinoxes, letting light enter chambers in exact patterns on specific days. The Maya built entire cities around cosmic alignment. The Pyramid of El Castillo, also in Chichen Itza, casts a shadow resembling a serpent slithering down its staircase during the spring and autumn equinoxes, a deliberate design that linked the temple to the sky and the sacred serpent god Kukulkan. But this celestial knowledge wasn't just symbolic, it structured daily life. The Maya created intricate calendars, most famously the Tzolk'in, a 260-day ritual calendar, and the Hop, a 365-day solar calendar. These interlocked in a system known as the calendar round, forming repeating cycles that guided everything from planting to prophecy. For deeper historical tracking, they used the long count, a system that measured vast spans of time, stretching back to mythic origins. The now famous date, December 21, 2012, wasn't an end of the world, but the close of a major cycle and the beginning of a new era. Their concept of time was cyclical, not linear, a repeating spiral where history echoed through the ages. Important events were recorded on stele, stone pillars that marked time down to the day using dot and bar glyphs. Astronomy wasn't separate from religion or politics. Kings claimed divine legitimacy through their alignment with celestial events. A ruler's accession might coincide with the rising of Venus or a solar zenith, reinforcing the idea that they ruled by cosmic design. For the Maya, to understand the stars was to understand the gods, and by extension, to understand themselves. The sky was not distant. It was alive, present, and intertwined with every heartbeat of Maya life. Beneath the canopy of stars and amidst the towering temples, the ancient Maya performed rituals that connected the earthly and divine. These weren't mere performances, they were essential acts to sustain the balance of the universe. Rituals marked every key moment of Maya life, from births and harvests to war victories and coronations. Central to these ceremonies was the belief that divine forces needed to be nourished through offerings, music, dance, incense, and even blood. Dancers in feathered regalia would move in slow, rhythmic steps, accompanied by the pounding of drums, the blast of conch shells, and the deep thrum of turtle shell percussion. These dances weren't just artistic, they were reenactments of myths, with performers taking on the roles of gods, ancestors, or animals. Smoke from burning copal resin filled the air, believed to carry prayers to the heavens. In some temples, it's said the smoke wafting through sunlit chambers was interpreted as a physical manifestation of the spirit world. Some rituals involved self-sacrifice. Nobles or priests would pierce their tongues or earlobes, offering drops of blood onto sacred paper, which was then burned. This act was not only a personal sacrifice but a symbolic communication with the gods, believed to open portals to the spirit realm. Public ceremonies could also be dramatic displays of political power. Kings would ascend temple staircases, dripping with ceremonial garb and jade, offering tribute to the gods before their people. These moments reinforced both cosmic order and royal authority. The rituals often followed the rhythms of the calendar cycles. Special festivals aligned with Venus's appearance or equinox sunrises were common. On these days, the boundaries between worlds were thought to thin, and the gods were closer, watching, listening. Through these sacred ceremonies, the Maya lived in constant dialogue with the cosmos, a civilization where every offering, every chant, every drop of blood was a whisper in the ear of the divine. At the heart of Maya spirituality was the cosmic balance, the eternal tension and harmony between three great realms, the underworld, Xibalba, the earthly plane, and the sky realm. This wasn't just myth, it shaped how the Maya built cities, aligned temples, and conducted rituals. The tallest pyramids were seen as man-made mountains, piercing the sky, connecting the human world with the divine. Deep caves and cenotes, often sites of sacred offerings, were thought to be entrances to Xibalba, the mysterious and sometimes dangerous underworld. The Maya world was held together by the world tree, the great ceiba, whose roots stretched into the underworld, trunk stood on earth, and branches reached into the heavens. Every temple complex, every city center was designed with this vertical map in mind. The four directions, north, south, east, and west, were also deeply symbolic, each associated with a color, a deity, and a cosmic role. For example, the east was red and linked to the rising sun and rebirth. The west, in contrast, was black, a place of endings, death, and mystery. Festivals often honored these directions with banners, dances, and offerings placed at cardinal points around temples. Even daily life was touched by this sense of orientation. Homes were built to face certain directions based on spiritual or calendrical meaning. Time itself was seen as cyclical, not linear. Every moment echoed a past moment and prefigured a future one. The Maya didn't just live in time, they lived with time, treating each day as sacred, filled with potential and meaning. To the Maya, balance wasn't a fixed state. It had to be maintained through ritual, sacrifice, and awareness. One misstep, one dishonored god or missed omen, and the world could tilt into chaos. But when harmony was kept, when the stars aligned and the temples rang with prayer, the Maya believed they walked alongside the gods. Not above, not below, but in resonance. A civilization bound not just by stone and calendar, but by a spiritual architecture as grand as their pyramids. To truly understand the Maya, one must go beyond the stones, the glyphs, and the stars, and look at how they lived with the sacred in every breath, every season, every act. In Maya life, there was no sharp boundary between the sacred and the everyday. Planting maize was not just agriculture, it was a reenactment of the gods' gift to humanity. Cooking, bathing, weaving, even walking through a forest, could be acts of reverence if done with awareness. Elders and spiritual leaders, known as Ajkaij or day keepers, held vital roles. They interpreted the sacred calendar, performed healing rituals, and guided people in choosing auspicious days for births, marriages, or travel. Even naming a child involved cosmological insight, a reflection of the day's energy and its alignment in the Tzolk'in cycle. The Maya also practiced bloodletting, often misunderstood, not as brutality, but as a personal gift to the gods, a renewal of the cosmic contract. Kings, queens, and even priests offered their own blood, believing it nourished the divine and kept the universe in harmony. Their cities weren't just political centers, they were cosmic blueprints. Ball courts, for example, symbolized the mythic battle between life and death, and playing the Mesoamerican ball game was a sacred drama of cosmic forces, not mere sport. Nature was never separate from their belief system. Mountains, rivers, trees, and animals were inhabited by spirits or gods. A jaguar wasn't just a predator, it was the guardian of the underworld. A hummingbird could be a divine messenger. Even stones could be considered alive, especially those used in temples or altars. To the Maya, every element of life reflected a pattern, a deeper meaning. They didn't seek to conquer nature or time. Instead, they sought to live in rhythm with it, believing harmony with the cosmos would bring abundance, peace, and divine favor. That harmony wasn't eternal. Storms would come. Crops would fail. Kingdoms would fall. But the Maya worldview was resilient, rooted in a belief that through ritual, respect, and remembrance, the cycles would return. The balance would be restored. As we step further into the heart of the Maya world, we leave behind bricks and calendars, and begin to drift into something more elusive, the world of myths and gods. This is where the physical meets the spiritual, where every mountain is sacred, every cave a portal, and every story a spell cast in stone. To the Maya, the world was not built once, it was repeatedly born, destroyed, and reborn. The universe, they believed, had gone through multiple ages, each ending in catastrophe or transformation. We are living in just one of those cycles, not the first, not the last. Central to this cosmic drama were the stories recorded in the Popol Vuh, the sacred narrative of the Kitch Maya. In it, we meet the hero twins, Hinapu and Zbalanque, tricksters and demigods who descend into the underworld to outwit the lords of death. Through sacrifice, resurrection, and cleverness, they help lay the foundations of the world we now know. These aren't just tales. They're cosmic instructions, metaphors for maze cycles, celestial movement, even political power. The hero twins represent rebirth, clever resistance, and cosmic balance. Their story echoes across stele, temple walls, and even modern Maya rituals. Gods were not distant. They walked among people, lived in trees, appeared in smoke. There was Itzamna, the creator deity and god of wisdom. Ninechel, goddess of the moon and childbirth. And Chak, the ever-important god of rain, who could bring nourishment or destruction. The underworld, called Xibalba, wasn't a place of punishment like hell, but a realm of trials, mystery, and transformation. Many temples and pyramids were constructed atop sacred caves, believed to be gateways into Xibalba itself. In Maya art, these gods and stories weren't just painted or carved, they were performed in rituals, acted out in dance, and spoken during ceremonies timed with the stars. In this way, myth wasn't history. It was now, it lived through action, through voice, through the people. And this intimate entanglement of daily life and cosmic story gave the Maya a rare gift, a sense that everything, from planting maize to watching Venus rise, was part of something sacred. Nothing was mundane. All was mythic. Imagine living in a world where every drop of rain, every bird's wing, every shadow held meaning. That was the Maya world. Their gods didn't reside far away, they lived in wind, jade, and sunlight. Nature was alive with deity presence. Mountains were seen as sleeping gods, and caves their mouths. The great Ceiba tree was the axis of the universe, connecting heavens, earth, and the underworld. Religion wasn't separate from life. A maize farmer wasn't just planting, he was reenacting the acts of gods, who shaped humans from corn. Eating, weaving, counting days, all carried echoes of the sacred. Maya gods could shift shape and meaning. Chak, the rain god, had 4 forms tied to directions and colors. He could send gentle rains or hurl storms, often shown with a curling snout and fanged mouth. The sun god Kinichaja changed too, smiling by day, fierce and jaguar-like at night. His journey across the sky was a cosmic drama, reminding people of cycles, sacrifice, and renewal. Rituals weren't superstition, they were communication. Bloodletting, practiced by nobles, offered life force to the gods. Cacao, feathers, jade, and smoke carried prayers into the sky. Every act was timed with care. Rituals matched celestial events and mythic stories. Even ball games were sacred, reenacting battles between light and dark, life and death. In this enchanted world, belief pulsed through cities, homes, and maize fields. It wasn't just religion, it was truth turned into story, rhythm, and daily practice. Mayan cities weren't built randomly. They were carefully designed to reflect cosmic order. The layout of temples, plazas, and pyramids wasn't just architectural, it was spiritual geometry. Cities mirror the universe. The central plaza often symbolized the center of the world, with 4 corners representing cardinal directions. Each direction had its own color, god, and meaning. Temples and pyramids pointed toward the heavens. Their stairs were often aligned with the sun's movement. During solstices and equinoxes, shadows and light played sacred games across their stones. One stunning example is the Temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. During the equinox, the setting sun creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the pyramid's steps. It's more than spectacle, it's a reminder of the gods' descent to earth. Maya architects were also astronomers. They aligned observatories to track Venus, the moon, and eclipses. The sky wasn't a mystery, it was a map of divine intent, woven into their cities. Ball courts weren't just for sport, they were cosmic stages. The game symbolized the eternal battle between light and darkness. The shape of the court often mimicked the underworld, with players enacting mythic tales. Even ordinary buildings reflected belief. Houses were constructed to face east, where the sun is reborn each day. Fireplaces represented the hearth of the world, and doorways were seen as portals between realms. To walk through a Mayan city was to move through myth and meaning. Every stone had a story. Every wall echoed with gods. Nature wasn't just part of Mayan life, it was the canvas of their mythology. Trees, animals, caves, rivers, each held divine significance and was woven into their understanding of the cosmos. At the center of this sacred worldview stood the ceiba tree, tall, wide-branched, and deeply rooted. For the Maya, it wasn't just a tree. It was Yaksh, the world tree, the axis that connected heaven, earth, and the underworld. Its roots reached into Xibalba, the shadowy underworld, its trunk stood in the human realm, and its towering branches stretched into the celestial realm, where gods and ancestors dwelled. Many cities featured carved or painted images of the ceiba, often flanked by deities. Sometimes, the king himself was shown as the tree, a living bridge between worlds, a conduit of divine will. Caves were just as sacred. They weren't empty voids, they were wombs of the earth, gateways into the underworld. Offerings, rituals, and even burials were often placed inside these limestone caverns, hidden from the sun but not from spirit. Rivers and cenotes, those deep, water-filled sinkholes, were believed to be portals as well. To drop a gift into their depths was to speak to the gods. Some sacrifices, animals, incense, jade, even people, were made at these watery thresholds. The natural world constantly whispered to the Maya. A bird's cry, a jaguar's path, the rustle of wind through maize, everything was seen through the lens of meaning and message. Life and land were never separate. To live in the Maya world was to live in a space that breathed alongside you, one where sacred nature and cosmic purpose were inseparable. The Maya were not just stargazers, they were cosmic architects. They built cities in alignment with celestial patterns, crafting their world according to the movements of the sun, moon, Venus, and the stars. Take El Castillo, the pyramid at Chichen Itza. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, a shadow in the shape of a serpent slides down its staircase, a precise alignment that shows just how advanced their astronomical knowledge was. The planet Venus held particular significance. To the Maya, Venus was a warrior and an omen. They tracked its appearance with mathematical precision, timing battles and rituals to its cycles. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Maya books, contains detailed Venus tables that still astonish modern astronomers. Their calendars reflected this celestial sophistication. The Tzolk'in, a 260-day ritual calendar, and the Hab, a 365-day solar calendar, interlocked like gears. Together, they formed a 52-year calendar round, a sacred era after which time was thought to renew. Every movement in the heavens had meaning, not just scientifically, but spiritually. Time wasn't just measured. It was revered, lived, and celebrated. For the Maya, to observe the sky was to understand the gods, destiny, and the fabric of reality itself. For the Maya, astronomy wasn't merely observation, it was divine orchestration. Each star, planet, and eclipse held symbolic weight, influencing the structure of cities, the timing of rituals, and the rhythm of daily life. Their priest astronomers, known as Akayan, were revered figures. They didn't just track the heavens, they interpreted them. Perched atop pyramids and observatories, they recorded the rising and setting of Venus, the cycles of the moon, and the passage of the sun across the sky with remarkable precision, often using simple shadow tools and horizon markers. In cities like Uxmal, Köpen, and Tikal, structures were built not just for aesthetics or function but for alignment. For instance, on specific days of the year, the sunlight would shine through narrow temple corridors or light up specific carvings, all to mark celestial events like solstices, equinoxes, or zenith sunrises. One of the most studied is the El Castillo Pyramid at Chichen Itza, where, during equinoxes, the setting sun casts a pattern of shadows that create the illusion of a serpent slithering down the temple's side. To the Maya, this wasn't just a trick of light, it was a divine message from Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god. Time, for them, was not a straight line but a sacred spiral. The Tsokin, a 260-day ritual calendar, and the Hab, a 365-day solar calendar, were interlocked like gears. When combined, they formed the calendar round, a 52-year cycle, a complete sacred era. Longer spans of time were measured using the long count, capable of tracking billions of days. And when one era ended, another began. To the Maya, endings were beginnings in disguise. Much like the stars that vanish at dawn only to return the next night, time was eternally reborn. The heavens weren't distant or silent, they were alive, filled with memory and intention. As the Maya calendar advanced through its cycles and kings recorded their lineage in stone, their understanding of time and the cosmos continued to deepen. They didn't simply count days, they mapped meaning onto time itself. A particular day could be favorable for planting, or ill-fated for travel. Entire cities coordinated festivals, sacrifices, and royal rituals according to celestial cycles that were calculated with astonishing precision. Their astronomer priests studied the movements of Venus so meticulously that they predicted its retrograde motion with near-modern accuracy. The planet was associated with war and power, and its appearance in the sky was interpreted as an omen, sometimes one of renewal, sometimes of destruction. But what's truly remarkable is how seamlessly this cosmic wisdom blended into the daily rhythms of life. Farmers knew the best times to sow based on star positions, and artists carved these celestial events into temple walls. Every act, from the mundane to the monumental, existed within a larger cosmic order. Even in moments of great upheaval, such as drought or invasion, the Maya seemed to seek meaning in time, not escape from it. For them, time was not an enemy. It was a living thread that bound them to their ancestors, their gods, and their descendants still to come. Even in the absence of modern instruments, the Maya built entire cities in harmony with the skies. At Chichen Itza, during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the shadows along the steps of the Great Pyramid, El Castillo, cast the illusion of a serpent slithering down the side. It was not an accident. It was a deliberate alignment, a celestial event made stone. They constructed observatories like El Caracol, with narrow windows positioned to track the movements of Venus, the Sun, and the Moon. These structures weren't just architectural marvels, they were timekeeping devices, cosmic calculators, and sacred spaces rolled into one. Yet, amid their precision, there remained room for awe, for mystery, for reverence. The Maya didn't claim to control the cosmos, they sought to live in harmony with it. The rituals performed beneath star-filled skies were meant to maintain this balance, to ensure that time, crops, and kingdoms flowed in divine rhythm. And still today, modern descendants of the Maya continue to observe many of these traditions. In Guatemala and parts of Mexico, daykeepers carry forward the knowledge of the sacred calendar, interpreting days, guiding decisions, and performing ceremonies that echo across centuries. Their voices, like those of their ancestors, whisper that time is not merely what we measure. It is something we feel, something we live, something we pass down like an ancient story told by starlight. From deep within the jungle, the temple stones still whisper. The echo of footsteps, the murmur of chants, the distant toll of obsidian blades marking time not in seconds, but in stars. As the stars guided the Maya, so too do they remind us, quietly, patiently, that time is more than clocks and calendars. It is the pulse of the earth beneath our feet, the rustle of leaves under the night wind, the turning of the seasons, just as it has turned for millennia. From their observatories of stone and shadow, the Maya look skyward not just for answers, but for understanding. And in doing so, they created a world where science and spirit lived side by side, where each day held meaning, and every cycle held promise. Tonight, as you settle into rest, perhaps a part of you can feel that ancient rhythm too, the slow breath of time that connects all lives, all dreams, all sleep-filled skies. So close your eyes gently. Let the stories of long-ago days drift like constellations above you. And as the last echoes of temple chants fade into stillness, allow your thoughts to quiet, your breathing to soften, and your body to surrender. You are safe here. Still. Drifting. Like time itself. The city breathes in sleep now. Fires flicker low. Shadows dance across stone walls carved with stories older than memory. Above, the stars begin their slow procession across the night sky, the same stars the Maya watched with such reverence. The calendar sleeps, the sun waits beyond the horizon, and dreams pass like gentle winds through the ceiba trees. And as your own breathing deepens and slows, perhaps you too are part of that great cycle, not apart from time, but wrapped gently within it. Sleep well now. The night is long and kind, and the stars will keep watch.